Hi, I'm Dr. Walter Matwaychuk, and the purpose of today's intermittent reinforcement email message is to talk to you a little bit about the layers of emotional disturbance associated with a particular emotional episode. Rational emotive behavior therapy encourages people to see that their emotional reactions are rather complex, and after they have upset themselves, they very often experience secondary or sometimes even tertiary emotional upset. The secondary emotional upset is upset about the initial primary emotional experience. So, for example, a person may get guilty for having displayed anger. Or, very often with panic, people will get anxious about their anxiety. They'll anticipate getting anxious, and then they will get anxious about their anxiety, so then they'll avoid. Or in the moment that they're experiencing anxiety, they may very well get anxious about their anxiety, only making their anxiety much worse in the current circumstance they find themselves in. Other people will get depressed about being depressed, which will exacerbate their depression. Or they may get shameful about their depression. And so it goes. Albert Ellis said that people were creative in how they constructed their emotional disturbances and layered them, and encouraged people to target both the primary emotional disturbance and the secondary emotional disturbance and in any other layer that may accompany a particular emotional episode. Often the secondary disturbance involves self-devaluation, where the person puts themselves down for their primary emotional upset, but not always. And so it's important that you, in trying to help yourself, identify the different layers of your emotional disturbance and then challenge the ideas at each level. So you might begin with the secondary disturbance and work on accepting yourself despite having gotten angry. Or you might begin by accepting your depression, even though you don't like it, so that you can then function despite feeling depressed and not making it worse. You can become concerned through sensible thinking about symptoms of anxiety so you don't exacerbate them and turn your initial symptoms of anxiety into a full-blown panic attack. And by doing so, you will significantly help yourself use REBT and have a much more robust therapeutic response to your own therapeutic efforts. So I would encourage you to read today's intermittent reinforcement email message, and I use the case of someone who has trouble speaking in public, where they might get very anxious and freeze up. And even if you don't have problems with public speaking anxiety, I would encourage you to study this particular intermittent reinforcement email message, because it will raise your awareness as to how people experience these multiple layers of emotional upset and then how to address each layer. And this is important because although you may not have emotional difficulties in public speaking, you may very well get angry about your emotional displays, or you may directing that anger at yourself, or you may get guilty about your emotional displays or embarrassed about your emotional displays. And it's really good for you to learn how to identify the different layers, whether or not you experience public speaking anxiety. On Saturday, I hold a demonstration that's free. It's on Zoom. I call it the Rational Emotive Behavioral Conversation Hour. I talk to a volunteer, and during these sessions, you'll hear me identify some of these different layers of emotional upset and then offer the volunteer an opportunity to discuss one layer or the other, and hopefully there's time to discuss all the different layers. But I would encourage you to join me, because people who observe these volunteer demonstrations, will watch the volunteer struggle with their particular problem and the feedback that I give them, and derive a great deal of benefit from observing the conversational process. And then you'll be better equipped to handle your own emotional displays and do REBT self-therapy. These are held at 9 a.m. Here in Philadelphia every Saturday. It's on Zoom. That's 2 p.m. in the UK, 5 p.m. in Bucharest, 6:30 in New Delhi, 10 o'clock in Tokyo, and 11 o'clock in Sydney, Australia. We've been at it for well over 100 weeks now and going strong. After 40 minutes, I take questions from the observing audience, and it turns out to be a very good, useful learning experience. So I encourage you to attend. I encourage you to read today's intermittent reinforcement email message. And most importantly, I encourage you to identify and then target each level of emotional disturbance when you are using REBT to help yourself think differently, feel differently, and behave more effectively in the challenging situations that you face in your life. Thank you for your attention.